America is the biggest market in the goddamn world. It was their fucking crowning glory to break there.
Baby used to stay out all night long. She made me cry.
My documentary is about Keith Richards, guitarist, Rolling Stone, rock star. And it was a really interesting experience to make. I know Stone's lore inside and out, and he gets asked the same questions in every interview. You know, tell me about Mick, tell me about, you know, Brian Jones. And he's answered those questions a million times, and that's not interesting to him. So my premise going in was, what does Keith want to talk about? You know, what is it like to hang out with Keith? And the film in that way, I think, really reflects that experience. I mean, it meanders, and I mean that in a good way, that like Keith, it kind of drifts along, and I think you do see the real Keith. I've interviewed a lot of people, and when you put the camera on them, they become somebody different. Keith, there's not one iota of difference between the Keith you get on camera or off camera. You know, you start filming, you stop filming, and he doesn't change.
I love my sugar, but I love my honey too. I'm a greedy motherfucker, and I don't know what to do. I've got a cross.
The only reason the film ever happened was because Keith enjoyed it. You know, it wasn't supposed to be a film, it was an accident. You know, initially, I was asked to sit down with Keith and talk about music for one day. And as a music fan, I said I would love to do that, but his manager said, no matter what, we're not going to make a documentary. And we had such a good time that first day when I brought in a pile of albums and a turntable and we listened to records, that she said, well, you guys should keep filming. To me, the question I wanted to ask Keith more than anything was this idea that he had always wanted to be an old blues man. You know, from the days he sat next to Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and these people that he grew up worshiping, who were, at that point, when the Stones were starting, younger than Keith is now. I really wanted to know his perspective of having become that figure he wanted to be 50 plus years ago.
You know, Muddy was younger then than you are now. I mean, it seems like you, when you were young, kind of wanted to be one of those guys, and now, in a way, you kind of are one of those guys.
I know. Life's a funny thing, you know. Nobody wants to get old, but they don't want to die young either. You know, and you just got to follow this thing down the path, you know.
This film was actually not a struggle to make. We did it very quickly. I will say, when I showed it to Keith the first time, I was very nervous just to see what he would say. And I sat behind him and we watched the entire movie, and he was chuckling to himself, and I thought that was a good sign. And at the end of the movie, he stood up and said, I have one comment for you. You shouldn't change a fucking thing. And then he had his laugh. He had the laugh, which is everywhere, and which I want to make it into my ringtone.
I don't consider myself a piano player. I use it as a paint box, and just a touch here, a touch there, usually just the right hand.
I mean, in a way, Keith's sense of zen these days, or you could say Keith's sense of I don't give a fuck, is something we should all aspire to, because, you know, it's the best way of living with all the crap we have to live with as humans. I mean, that to me is the biggest takeaway of the film, is that it's a way to live your life that I think is healthier, and that, you know, we all should be Keith Richards.